What's up, Redemption? How you doing? As always, John Hendricks here, welcoming you to episode number 20 of the Threshing Floor podcast. That's right, small milestone, but we've reached episode 20. On this week's episode, we're welcoming Brad and Rob Smith, two people that have been on the podcast before. We're welcoming them back, and we're going to be talking about combos within the game of Redemption and the state of combos, and how much combo is too much combo, how soon should something be done about recent combos that have come out. We're going to get into all of that and talk about that with these guys. I want to thank you for being here, as always. Can't do it without people listening, so appreciate you. All right, thank you for joining on another episode of The Threshing Floor. As always, I'm John Hendricks, and joined by Brad, our usual suspect.
What's up, everybody?
In addition to Brad, we also have Rob Smith on, who is Demon Hunter 85 on the boards in Discord. How you doing, Rob?
Doing good. Glad to be back, John.
Yep. Last time you were on, you said you felt kind of like you were pushed to the back. We had a bunch of cool people come on, high-end people, and then it was you. So, I actually pushed Chris back this week to get you on, you and Brad, to talk about what we're going to talk about. So go ahead and feel a little special for that.
Well, I appreciate that. No hard feelings, Chris.
So I guess we'll just jump right into what this week's episode is going to be about. If you have been paying attention to Lackey Grand Prix meta and kind of identifying the meta with that, it's completely shifted from the first run of the Lackey Grand Prix to this one because GOC cards have come out. And in addition to that, the IJ Plus cards. And if you saw Jaden's video 2 weeks ago, he broke the game. Jaden broke the game. And I don't think anyone really expected anyone else to break the game but Jaden. So, with that, we're going to be talking about, I guess, the state of combo within the game of Redemption. And being a big fellow myself, I know my way around a combo or two. So, I guess we'll just jump right in. Both you, Rob, and Brad, you guys have both played against the first combo, which is Meek Soul Unity except for the first. And it can lead to a state where you can deck out turn one. You had it, Rob, against Jaden, the guy who I guess did it the first time that anyone had seen it. I don't think it had been brought to light before that. How did it feel sitting there and watching him go off?
Well, it honestly, I quite enjoyed it for a minute there. It was just like watching it, going, because he in the video, if you guys have seen it, he explains, well, this is how the interaction works, because I wasn't aware when it was first being done, and then so he's showing me this. I'm just watching and okay, is this similar to the Love at First Sight where I'm going to sit here and I have time to go order some food and do a little laundry and then come back and, maybe have a turn. But it's definitely fun to watch. But at the same time, you're just like, wow, I wasn't prepared for this. And this is kind of nutty that this is going to happen like this. So,
Brad, you also faced it, not from Jaden, but you faced it in round one of the Lackey Grand Prix against Bingaling. That's his name on Discord. I think his actual name's Seth. And so he played it against you, and you told me after the game was over, he forgot to trigger his first in the opening 8, and then he proceeded to still deck out turn 1.
Yeah, so I give a lot of props to Seth. I'm not sure how. I'm sure his deck was a little bit different than Jaden's was, but yeah, he drew his first 8. He got the first and had Meek Souls out, and I was like, oh no, not this again. And he went first. He rolled higher than me, and he got to his prep phase. He done had a few people in territory that played like a fort or two. He's like, hey man, I forgot to trigger the first. I was like, man, I'm sorry, it's a tournament. And so, but I didn't want, I was like, oh man, this is going to screw up his whole deck. Like I knew what he was trying to do. Well, I thought I did, at least from watching Jaden's video. He proceeds to work around that. And like you said, by the end of his turn, he had 8 cards in his deck. And And 6 of those I underdecked in battle with the outsiders because he had Noah, Meek, and Territory.
Okay, so he didn't technically deck out. He had 2 cards left.
He would have had 2 cards left. And I'm like, dude, how did you literally just do that, missing that cue? So mad props to him. He did a really good job on that. But in saying that, you know, it's like you said, should I go do laundry? Should I go like order pizza? I mean, the first turn took about 30 minutes, like before I ever drew my first 3 cards for my first turn. And that wasn't him just waiting around and like stalling. That was just, it just took that long.
What was your final score though, Brad?
Well, it ended up being 5-4, but
5-4. Who won? Who won, Brad?
Not trying to rub it in anybody's face or anything, but yeah,
Brad won. Okay,
I won.
Brad, take the claim your fame. He decked out turn 1. You still won the game 5-4.
Yeah,
but he had reserved. You told me he reserved your Son of God, so you won 5 souls the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, I had to use my second coming on the first hand because he tried to impartial judgment me on first turn while decking out. So I went and got 3 woes and had to negate that. But the game really flipped because he had all his evil characters out there, and I forget what the enhancement's called, but I went into battle and it reserves all evil characters. And so I reserved all his evil characters. And then he didn't have anybody to block. So it ended up working out.
It backfired a little bit.
Yeah.
So you won 5-4. And, Rob, you weren't so fortunate. You got beat 5-1 against Jaden.
Oh, yeah. I was definitely drugged through the ringer there. And I think at one point I had Son of God in my hands. Like, you know what? You're not going to 5-0 me. I'm getting one. I'm at least going to make this not, a shutout here.
So we've got 2 different players, 2 different games. I have not personally played against just the first combo. We'll get into that a little bit more against what I've played. But so we've got a 5-4 win. Brad withstood it and won. And you played it and got beat 5-1 without any heads up that it was a thing. At least Brad knew that it was a thing. So when he saw it coming into play, he was like, oh, here we go again. So he at least had some prior knowledge where you didn't necessarily.
Yeah, and I'll say, I think that may have been Seth's first time playing as well. I don't know how familiar he was with his cards and his deck. I think if he was a little bit more familiar or had optimized a few cards, I probably wouldn't have stood a chance, to be honest. But I was able to capitalize on a few key mistakes or, just, again, not the deck not being optimized.
So I wanted to have a discussion about this because it came up kind of some people a little worried about it turning into a situation like last year where Nats became the meta at Nats was, are you playing combo or are you not playing combo? And it kind of affected a lot of your matchups throughout the rounds. And so I wanted to talk about that. And honestly, the way that the Love at First Sight came up and just there was a lot of talks about it, but everybody was having talks about it last year, on phone calls with individuals and things on the back end. And kind of some of that kind of led to the kind of sparked the idea for me to actually come out with the podcast so that we could discuss things like that as they happen and are relevant to, everyday players. And, of course it's posted on the board's Discord, but it's a lot more engaging to hear people talk about it. So it was one of the ideas. So I'm definitely glad that we have an opportunity to talk about new combos coming out in a better forum for getting that information to the community and kind of giving thoughts about it. Do you guys think, your initial thought, you played against it, one of you's won, one of you didn't. Do you think something needs to be done to slow down that interaction, or do you think, I guess, again, and I've talked to both of you guys, it's a fine line that the leadership for the game has to walk, because I really appreciate the fact that when Gabe comes out and talks about a combo, he's like, we're going to let a combo exist to the point to where it's going to have to be proven that it's unhealthy for the game for us to interject, because there are players that only want to play card games like these because they're a combo type player. And we definitely don't want to push those players away. I'll be honest with you, last year, I didn't really want to run the combo at nationals or whatnot, but it was fun to actually learn about how to pilot a combo deck. I've never done that since starting this game, and the way that I used to play in Yu-Gi-Oh when I played that very briefly. I wasn't trying to abuse one card interaction to the point to where my deck was built entirely around that. So learning about that, I can definitely see how that's engaging for players and makes them want to play the game that style. And I definitely think there needs to be an area for them to exist within the meta to where I guess they have the ability to do things that are fun to them and engage them and make them want to play the game. But then how much of that is too much? And that's a fine line that leadership has to walk. So we're not second guessing anything. We're not first guessing. We're just debating. Healthy debate here. Our discussion, maybe not even debate. I guess debate requires that we've got two sides. We might all agree. Who knows? But what do you guys think about? Do you think something needs to be done to tone it down?
So initially, like you said, I like the idea of just letting it play out for a while. I don't think somebody should come on and be like, yeah, something needs to be done, like right now, boom. But I will say, I think that anything, like my stipulations for something being abused is being able to run something like over and over again, like a bunch of times, like any card. It'd be like if you could play maybe not Son of God, but a card over and over and over again. The first is one of those things that you can keep playing it, and there's only a couple cards in the game that can stop it. So, for instance, one thing we talked about is that it just stays on your deck. And Herod's Temple and stuff interacts with it really well. You can reserve it, which puts it in play. Then you can draw a card. You can get to hand limit every single battle, as well as tossing all enhancements. So that's a really big benefit. Or you can just do it at the end of the battle, and so you can go to hand limit. And so you can end every turn like that until you run out, which more than likely you're going to run out first turn. But one of the most frustrating things is the fact that it always stays in your deck. So you can't Son of God it. And this is what we were talking about beforehand, right? You can't Son of God it. You can't woes it. You can't get it. Like you can't rescue it. It's just always going to be on the deck unless they choose to keep it in play, which who's going to do that, right? Unless you're trying to pull off the cross or something. But I wish that it said, if drawn, then you may top the deck this and draw one. I think
which would effectively just cut out the Herod's Temple manipulation and the Harvest Time manipulation.
Yeah, getting it in play different ways. I think Covet, for instance, if drawn, or Darkness, if drawn, or put in play by an opponent's special ability, then you get the benefit. Those are great because they don't break the cards like that. Because those souls have a very strong ability, and so I think they require a little bit more than like just put in play. So that would be mine. But again, I'm willing to kind of let it sit out. Which, I know I'm talking for a while, but like seeing these combos is great because if I were to get hit, if Jaden and others were to just hang on to these till nationals and hit you with them, that would be like, oh man. But when you know they're there, you can kind of build your deck around it, which I'm okay with that. But at the same time, it's like I can't build a deck how I want to build a deck because I have to build my deck around this and then go from there.
Yeah, I think for me, I kind of agree with a little both of you guys. Like John, I know you said it, like it's a thin line. Like it's really hard to like just jump in there and say, all right, this needs to be banned like right away. Like this is unhealthy, and you want those combo players to have that part of it. And then the other side of that coin, when you have these newer players, we're trying to get this game to grow and see more people into this, and they come in and face something like that right away. It's got to deflate them like really quick. I don't think I'm at the point where I'm like, yeah, this is a terrible thing and it needs to be banned, needs to be errated. I know that whatever does happen, I know all of us, we trust the leaders that are there and they're looking at it, but it's not as bad as Love at First Sight. I mean, even with my game, like I recognize some of the things that I was doing that I could have changed. For instance, not playing the hopper if you're playing the Meek Law Soul Unity. That kind of messed me up there. But even I could have played Burial a little earlier, or right after he played Harvest Time. I mean, there's different things that you can have in your hand to kind of slow it down. But I think where it gets dangerous is that, especially if they're going first and they are decking out and they're getting down, they're probably going to not only have their pieces that they want to rescue and win, or they're going to get into their dominance, but they're probably going to draw into their counters too, which is going to slow you down. So even if they don't get the best things, if they can put any couple of counters down and then you're starting 8, you didn't get anything to punch through that, you could be just in an uphill battle like the whole game, but just like what I was in. So
yeah. Again, thin line. You guys make some great points. I think and I know that I told Brad I wanted to make this point, but he went ahead. It's hard not to talk about it. If you think about it in context. The first lost soul is the only soul that is protected by itself. Its own ability protects it from the Son of God. Literally, if they choose to put it on their deck, you can never play Son of God on it. It's the only soul that does not present an opportunity, except for maybe a hopper once it's in your territory, but then it's still in play doing something. The fact that you come out, you gain the ability, and then you hide it from the Son of God. So even if they're sitting there with Son of God, Second Coming, they can't stop your interaction with this card. I think that's part of it. But I definitely also see the fact that Brad was able to win, and you also have the cross that potentially punishes for an opponent decking out. I don't think decking out turn 1 is healthy for the game overall, but is it unhealthy for a season for that to dominate to where, you have to play with an idea of how to work around that? And I'll say this about last year's meta that kind of got warped for Nationals. Everyone wants to talk about the negative side of it and the fact that we're glad that it got nerfed afterwards, and a lot of people wish it had gotten done beforehand. Going into Nationals, I definitely wanted something to be done about it because I didn't like the fact that I couldn't play the deck I wanted to, because the counters that were targeting Love at First Sight, if you were playing counters in your deck, which most people were, they were going to shut down the deck that I wanted to play. But throw that thought away. When you have a player like Josh come in and build a deck that comes into a heavy combo meta, and it's a combo that needs 2 cards to go off, and I would say the consistency is at least 90% it was going off turn 1. In the version that Jeremy was running that I mirrored when I played, or somewhat mirrored with just a few tech differences, is about 9 out of 10 times you're going to get that combo off first turn. And then you're going to devastate your opponent and roll to a win. And then obviously when everybody got word of it, the counter to the combo came out. It could slow it down, but for someone to build a counter deck and then go and win against the field in regular matchups and against Love at First Sight, to where when Josh won that, I think it means more that he was able to navigate the minefield of what the meta was. And that makes his win mean a little bit more in my mind, because he was able to overcome something. He didn't play the deck that he wanted to, like Brad mentioned, but he played the deck he had to in order to win. And anytime you're playing a competitive game, is not always going to be cut and dry to where I get to play what I want and be competitive. In order to be competitive, you're going to have to read the meta, read the field, and then build your deck in order to stop things of that nature. And I think Josh did a fantastic job with his deck, and it was overwhelmingly impressive to see him do that and get to witness it firsthand, being at Nationals last year. I think at a certain point, letting that happen, we don't get that experience of Josh going and showing what he can do with building a deck again and building a successful counter deck that weighted the coin flip in his favor. We don't get that without leadership deciding that they're not going to do anything about the combo until after Nationals. And then as soon as Nationals was over, boom, it's fixed. It's not going to affect the meta the next year. So we have a season of Love at First Sight. I mean, the Bible says to everything there is a season. So do we grab this first combo and immediately rip it down, or do we let it show that it's unhealthy for a season and then get rid of it? And then, like I said, we're not second guessing, first guessing leadership's decisions. They're going to make the decisions they feel are healthy for the game. They're in those positions for a reason. But I enjoy seeing the combos come out because it takes creativity to come up with them. And I know there's type of players that's the reason they play the game. But then you have to wonder, what is too much? Where's that line? So assuming that this is coming out on Tuesday when it's supposed to, we're recording Sunday night. Hi, guys. Let you know a little bit of the backdrop here. Recording Sunday night. Jaden has a gameplay footage video from round 1 of the Lackey Grand Prix that should be coming out on Monday. So by the time you're listening to this, yesterday Jaden dropped a video that you should have watched. That deck contains a combo that might be one that doesn't need to go for a season. If you have not watched that video, definitely go and watch it, because there's no reason for you to listen to me tell you about it when you can see the guy that created the deck, pilot it, and show you what it does. But just in a very basic version, it uses a interaction with Life in the Sun and Ephesian Widow. And it allows you to basically use those 2 cards as long as you control a Meek Clay card to deck out turn 1. And then after you deck out turn 1, you now have all of your resources. You put them in play as you've gotten them out of your deck. So you're sitting there, hand limit or a little under, but you've got all your cards, everything that you could play down. You've played down the Church of Christ, and now you have Apollos. And now instead of using Life in the Sun, recurring it in an infinite loop to draw out with Ephesian Widow, now you're bouncing Apollos, and you're creating a token every time. With the Church of Christ, that's a current token. So then you can play Sowing Bountifully equal to or greater than the number of cards in their deck. And then you can reveal every evil card or every card in their deck and discard every evil card. That's evil dominance, dual alignment, basically everything that they can block with that's not in the opening hand, every evil dominant going out of the deck. And then you can manipulate the game the rest of the way to win. Now, you don't get a bunch of 5-0, 5-1 wins like you do necessarily with the Love at First Sight combo from last year. But with this combo, and we'll just call it the Jaden combo. I don't know. We've got to come up with a cool name for it, guys. So we're open to suggestions. But this deck completely wipes out defensive resources, and then they still have their good cards for the most part. And they get to use those to try to, outpace you 2-5, but there's no blocking interaction from them except for what they had in their opening hand. And if you do it turn 1, they don't have access to the reserve to refill their hand with evil resources once those are played out. So turn 2, then they can start gathering resources from the reserve if they still have reserve access. But I showed both of you this combo right before we recorded. I also played a game against Jay today where he used the combo against me that I'm guessing him and Josh built for him to try out after Josh lost to Jaden with the combo in round 1 of Lackey. I think me and Jay were one of the last games completed for round 1 of the Lackey Grand Prix. I had a decent showing, but we'll get into that in a moment. I'll talk about that specific game. But bottle up exactly what you thought the first time I ran through and showed you the combo. What did you think about it, Rob?
So as you were breaking it down and showing it to me, I was just kind of shocked, and just the cards that you see involved are like, well, like you said, like Apollos or Ephesian Widow, and you're just like, well, I mean, who even uses those cards? They haven't really been meta relevant for a little bit, and just I gotta applaud Jaden and say right now the mindset that he has, and I've even told him that before. Like, he looks at this game through a different lens than everybody else, and just can see these things. And just looking at that, and it's just, you stand there like, I don't think I had many words when you were showing me at first. I think I was just like, wow, like, this is real. Like, this is, you can keep doing that loop, and getting to go over and over and over, and just to be able to deplete somebody's entire defense. Turn one, and they're basically just left with whatever's in their hand, unless there's other cards that they're playing to start hitting their hand as well. But I mean, that's a big blow, and that's really hard to come back from. And again, you're wanting to place cards down. It's a point that I mentioned before. You're wanting to put cards down to keep drawing. So some of those cards could be counter cards. I mean, it's going to be set up to where you're just going to be backed into a corner. And we were talking about a little bit before, this, like, to be able to use a card an infinite number of times it's ridiculous. I mean, this is one that I probably would say, yeah, I kind of agree with you, John. I don't think this should last for a season. So, but definitely props to Jaden and Josh and all those involved for seeing this, because it is definitely busted.
Yeah. What do you think, Brad? What were your initial thoughts?
I'll say about the same thing. I think with the first deck, even though you can deck out first turn, which I don't really like that aspect. Like, I don't think anybody should deck out 50. There shouldn't be a way to deck out 50 cards before an opponent has a chance to take a turn. That's just my opinion. But it's here, it's there, so you got to get around it somehow. That's fine. But with this, like in the first deck, you have to have a bunch of enhancements to help you get there. Like, there's this enhancement that gets that, and then you burn it. Okay, there's this enhancement that goes and grabs whatever. It goes to discard, blah, blah, blah. The fact that you can deck out and not lose anything, essentially, that you can literally just put everything in your territory and have all these counters and cards, and you have your whole hand set up, and it's like, oh, by the way, my discard pile has 2 cards in it, but I've went through my whole deck. That to me is like, and it's not even that hard to get to. A couple cards here. You may have the Crowd's Choice in your discard pile and 1 or 2 others, and then you got other stuff like wages and stuff that just keeps reshuffling. Yeah, that's a little like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm with you. Like, let's play it out. Like, I would love to try to make a deck to try to play against it and win. That would be interesting. As you mentioned.
Funny you should say you'd like to play against it. Because the way that this came up is, so yesterday, again, we're recording Sunday, so anybody in the community that plays Pokemon Go, yesterday, so Saturday, was a 12-hour day for a Johto Tour event, and I had set that day aside to spend with the family, and I wasn't real active on Discord or anything. We were out hunting Pokemon and trying to find shinies and, doing a lot of stuff just to waste time, just spending time with each other, having fun doing all that. Yes, I'm a nerd, but you know what? Shut up. So are you. You play Redemption. The point is, at about, 8:30, 9 o'clock, John asked me if I wanted to play a game, John Early. And I was like, sure, I'll play a game. And then it took a little while for me to get home. He kind of bashed me because I let him down. And then finally got home. We got the game in. Turns out he was using this combo deck against me that I knew I had already been given a heads up by Jeremy. So Jay didn't tell me about it. He was just going to play it against me. And that's fine. But Jeremy gave me a heads up, hey, there's a combo deck that Jay wants to try out. He's going to be using against you tomorrow. Didn't tell me what it was. But I can assume what cards would be involved just because I'm in tune enough with the community this year to where, like, it just doesn't come out of left field that there's a combo. Like, I'm talking to people enough to where now I can kind of pick up an idea. So I told John, yeah, I'd like to get a game in because I need to test a deck that I'm going to run. I'm just going to run Jaden's deck that he played against Matt in his last video. I'm going to run that deck against Jay tomorrow. He's got some combo deck. I don't really know what it's doing, but I didn't want to build a deck to try to stop a combo because I wanted to see what it did first. So I took that and he was like, well, what do you think the deck does? Or somehow we got talking about what the deck does, and I started throwing out guesses, and apparently Jaden was over at his place, or he was at Jaden's place. So they were together, and they just had a good old time because I was throwing out these guesses about this combo deck, knowing good and well that John was about to use this combo deck against me. And so we sit down, we're playing. He's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to play the combo deck that you're going to face tomorrow from Jay, his version." So we get the opening 8, and I have 1 star ability, and I go ahead and use a Minadab star ability, and it hits his Church of the Christ, and he's like, "Well, that'd be a good game," because that's a very vital part. And I actually had a really good opening hand for stopping him, using no changes, just using that deck that Jaden played with last week, which was at 57 cards, so it had an extra dominant in there. But anyway, he was like, "So you would have won, I guess, but do you want me to show you how the combo works?" And I don't know necessarily that I would have won or whatnot, but I'll just take his word for it. He showed me how the combo works. Jay didn't know that I knew how the combo works when we started our game. He might have had an idea that, I'm cunning enough to kind of figure it out, or that someone would have talked. But so he starts off, and I get the perfect opening hand to stop him today in our Lackey Grand Prix round 1 game. He won 5-4, but he did not pull off the combo with Sowing Bountifully to take my evil cards. I got turn 1, or opening hand. I won the roll, and I got to choose who was going first, and I chose him to go first, even with a combo deck, because I had Distress down. I had Shipwreck in my opening hand. I wanted him to drop his Church of Christ and just go ahead and hit Shipwreck on it, and that was going to be it. And I had Distressed. I figured I was good there, and I didn't want him to get 3 more cards if I went first before he went and tried to pull it off. So I stalled him first turn, and then I laid down counters. He never got the combo off, and we went back and forth a little bit. I was slow playing it so that I was making the smart decisions to try to stop what I knew was going to be coming with the combo deck. And toward the end, he ended up getting to his Ephesian Widow and his Life in the Sun, and he just needed to get to his Second Coming to get his last free soul. It was a 4-4 game at that point. He gets him down, and there's just this endless cycle that I can't do anything to stop it. I had already used dominance to stop him from comboing earlier in the game. He knew that. Smart player. He also used, a few different techs in there that John didn't have in his deck. So there's a lot of individuality in this while still using the common cards to pull off the combo. And he ended up getting his Son of God, dropping it 5-4. He won. But he did not get the Sowing Bountifully combo off, and we didn't really play what would be a normal game. I told John asked me how the game went afterwards, and I was like, honestly, I feel like I played one of my best games ever because I came into the game when everything was aggro. It was like all gas, no brakes. And I put the brakes on today, and I played that game in a slow fashion, methodical, making the smart play at each turn that I thought was the right play. And there was a couple of things I could have done different and maybe pulled out the win, but 5-4 against a combo deck that's as devastating as we're talking about, I don't think is bad. Obviously, he didn't combo, which, helped me make it 5-4, but I thought I had a pretty good showing. I played. Did you guys, Brad and Rob, did you guys see Jaden's video from last week? The deck that he used?
I actually have not watched that yet. Sorry, Jaden.
Yeah, I watched it.
Okay. So, Rob, you need to quit slacking. You need to watch the videos every week when they drop. Thursday, you know what I do Thursday afternoon? I've got it on my calendar. I'm at work. Do not disturb me. I'm just kidding. But people don't bother me. I really do watch it just about every Thursday around 2 o'clock. Like, I just get a slow afternoon. Boom. I watch them. So I was watching him play this deck, and I was like, okay, he used Song of Moses to come out off of David's Harp, play first off David the Psalmist to get all of these counter heroes out. And I was like, that looks cool if you can pull that off early. So I took that deck, and I made 3 changes knowing that Jay was running a combo deck, and I didn't want to sell out to stop a combo, but I did add 3 changes just to make me what I thought would be competitive. And it would give him an idea of what the deck could do against somebody that has knowledge of it. So I threw 24 elders into the reserve and got rid of a card from reserve to free up a spot in the main deck to add Virgin Birth. And then I dropped another hero because he had delivered in there, offering your son. And I was like, I feel like I need another way to play these just for the numbers to match up for me to be comfortable. So I dropped someone and I added Jacob, which is from Cloud of Witnesses that protects hands and your hand and deck. Because I was going to add a green guy. He's green. He offers a benefit. And then I swapped out Orphan's Lost Soul, which protects Lost Souls from evil cards, for Punisher, another negate Lost Soul, to negate heroes if you control more than 3 good brigades. And all of those changes were important for me stringing him out, because on Virgin Birth, if I'm not mistaken, that might have been how I got my shipwreck from the opening turn. I'm not 100% sure. But I also had Chronicles of the King. So the game opens, and this is, trying to stop the Love at First Sight counter from last year. Opening turn, tell me when you're in your prep phase. I let Jay go first because I had the Distressed Lost Soul, and I mentioned I didn't want him to gain 3 more cards before going. So I let him go first. I said, let me know when you're in your prep phase. All right, I'm in my prep phase. Drop Chronicles. He's like, that's okay. I can do what I need to do in discard phase. And then something else happened. He ended up not being able to pull it off. I think it was the fact that I had Distress down. So then I go and I add my Jesse the next turn. I had a couple of other cards, counters, and I was able to string it out to a competitive 5-4. And I'm trying to reason in my head whether I think it was overpowered, because I feel like you could build a deck to stop it and do mostly well. It has a lot of different points. And you guys, from the point that we watched earlier where I showed you guys how it kind of works and the idea behind it, there's a lot of chance for you to interject and have ways to stop it versus Love at First Sight last year. Once it popped off with those 2 cards, it needed Jacob, Follower of God, and Hidden Treasures. And after it got those 2 cards, you couldn't do anything to stop it. So there's a lot more opportunity to stop and interact with this combo. Do you guys think that means that we should... I know, Rob, you mentioned you don't think maybe it should go a whole season as well, but the more I think about it, I played against it. I had opportunities to stop it, and I almost won. Am I wrong for thinking that maybe it's even as strong as the impact of it? Maybe the fact that it's so vulnerable to counters, maybe there's a balance there that allows it to last maybe for the season? What do you guys think?
I don't think you're necessarily wrong in that. I mean, maybe that's just my opinion that I was so strong, heavy that it shouldn't last. I mean, I guess the way I'm looking at it is, yes, there are plenty of counters, and Chronicles being one, Distressed. We talked about, like, you have to build your deck a certain way. And so maybe, and I think we did even talk about it even before we recorded about, okay, some of the souls that we like undesirables, like that we want to really test out and play because they're fun to play, we might have to just go, we're just not going to play that. And then you play the Distressed, and whether it's the Blind Soul, and then Hunter to grab either one of those, and then Covet to take their first out. I mean, that's 4 out of your 7 souls right there. You just play those different things to try and hit them. And so you have to modify your deck in that, but I guess it really boils down to, like, your opening 8. And if you open and you don't have any of those, you don't have the Shipwreck, you don't have the Chronicles, or just anything to kind of slow them down enough, they could roll away with it. And so that kind of, and you said that, you mentioned in your game with Jay that he didn't really have enough to, even in the discard phase, to really go off. I mean, and I think even one of the times we were going through it, you hit that little stall too, like, and so it was like, okay, well, I didn't really get to go full combo and go completely empty my deck. So there is those odds that can happen, but what is the percentage? We mentioned earlier about 90% for Love at First Sight, and I think your number is accurate on that. But what do we think the percentage is that they're not going to brick in their opening hand, and you're going to open at least one or two of something to kind of put a wall up that they have to at least give you a turn and slow them down a little bit. So I guess that's something we'd have to see at least for a little bit and see what, as we see games being played, what the percentage is that it's hitting. I mean, Love at First Sight was scary, accurate turn one. And this looks to be something like that, but you're going to have to make every card in your deck count. When you're looking at what you're putting in, whether it's a soul, whether it's a dominant, which are probably the two main ones that are going to help you in your opening 8, or maybe a star ability as well, like you hit with Mimidad. You're going to have to make them count, and hopefully that in your opening 8 get something that you can just stop them right there.
One thing it comes down to is you either are sold out to stop it or you go first. So, because if you're not sold out to stop it, then most likely then you're playing it.
I don't know. I don't mean to cut you off and say that you're not right in whatever line of thinking you have, because everyone, even though I'm quote unquote hosting a podcast or whatnot, let me go ahead and first and foremost tell you that I'm just a guy that plays this game. I love the game just like everyone else that plays it. My opinion doesn't mean anything more than anyone else's. It's just everybody has an opinion. My opinion is that whatever you're saying, take into context that I took a deck that I've never played. I pulled Jaden's deck from last week. I watched him play it, and I made 3 changes, and I told you guys the 3 changes. I swapped the soul out. I moved 24 Elders and dropped a card from reserve, moved 24 Elders to reserve, and then I added I dropped a hero and brought in Jacob to protect hands. 3 cards. And then the rest of the deck was the exact same one that he played. And I was able to disrupt Jay. If Jay was on, he'd probably tell you every time he went to do something, I had an answer until the very end where he's fishing for a Son of God, and I had burned all my resources as far as dominance to interject on his turn.
My point is, though, that you're counting on either having a counter soul or counter dominant in hand in the opening 8. And with that, one of my big points is that if this is the combo that people are going to be running, it's going to force you to run cards like Shipwreck, which you might not run. Shipwreck's a good card, but it's cards you're targeting. Like Shield is a card that people would put Shipwreck in for.
Well, I think with Herod's Temple, Shipwreck is actually almost a staple level dominant with GOC Phase 1 now.
It could be, but you could also not. It's not one of the things that you have to. But if this combo's in, then you pretty much have to. You have to have cards like Christian Martyr in to try to get rid of their hero, their Ephesian Widow, whatever. You have to have 3 woes, which most people have that. You have to have Crowd's Choice, again, to give you another chance to get a 3 woes or a Shipwrecked or something else. And so what I'm saying is your DOMs are almost set for you. You can't play cards like Voice from Heaven. You can't play Grapes of Wrath. You can't play, you probably can't even really play like Burial, or something like that. It's good against the first combo, but not against this one. It's not going to stop it or help you. And so that to me is the only main thing. Like if there becomes a combo that forces you, these are the DOMs you have. Because if you don't have a good DOM or a DOM to play in your opening 8, they're going to get rid of every evil card in your deck, if they go first. That's what I was saying. Like, it's a matter of who goes first at that point, if you don't have luck of the draw. And so that would be my main thing.
That's definitely fair. Because I did have a couple of answers with Distress coming out turn 1 and having access to get Shipwreck. Again, I think that came by way of Virgin Birth, but I'm not 100% sure. So I had the answers in the opening 8, which gave me the flexibility to let him go first so that I limited his access to resources before he tried to combo. So I definitely get what you're saying. Let me ask you guys this, and this is kind of taking into account our player base. And again, I'll say that what you see on Discord is probably not the majority of players. There's players that have the starter decks and maybe buy, a few packs of the new set that you'll never hear from. They're at home playing with their family, or they have a small group that they're not worried about plugging into the community. It's just a game for them that they play lightheartedly. They're not super competitive about it. But the competitive players that we know on Discord, they're active on the boards, that, we're tossing out first name basis. John, you know who I'm talking about. I say Josh, you know who I'm talking about. Things of that nature. Jay, Jeremy. People know these people by first name basis. It's a small community. Of the small player base that we have, what's the percentage you think, guys? And I'll ask you first, Rob. What do you think the percentage of players that would consider themselves a combo player? Like, I want to play some type of combo deck or some type of combo in my deck. Because I think of the competitive, now I think it's completely, like, nobody cares about combos that's not one of the ultra competitive players. But of the ultra competitive players, I think we're around 50% and north of that. So what do you guys think?
I would say that number is probably about accurate. And if not, maybe a little bit more, just based off what happened at last Nats. They could see how prominent it was and go, you know what, maybe the next time I see a combo present itself, maybe I need to look into copying that or modifying it to my version, just to do that. And I say that number is, like I said, probably about accurate. And then the other half would be, either I'm going to play what I want, or I'm going to see this combo and go, no, I'm not going to play it, but I need to come up with a way to stop it. And so it'd be interesting to see what Josh does. Wonder if he can come up with another counter for this one.
I don't know what the percent is. I think it would be probably higher than 50% as far as the hardcore players. But I guess my thinking is, when it comes down to Nats, or when it comes to a very competitive tournament, what it's going to come down to when things like this happen are either you're playing the combo or you're playing against the combo. And I think that really limits the creativity of what's out there. One of the things that I was excited about whenever they nerfed the reserve rule was it really opened up for a lot of different themes and types of decks. That was really, like, for that period of time before GOC came out, you could play somebody and you had no idea what they were playing. I mean, once they started playing the cards and you're like, okay, they're playing this type of offense or this type of defense. But there was so many things available to win. And we saw that in the Lackey Grand Prix. Man, like, the amount of different styles of decks that people played, it was just fun, I think if we were to have
let me get on that note. I played the style of deck that loses, so I don't know how fun the Lackey Grand Prix was. Let's play it with context here.
But there's also other. I will say, I'll give another shout out to Seth too. He's one of the players I've played more times than most, especially because when I first started playing in Lackey, he was just one of the people that was always available. He's not as much anymore. And I'm not as much anymore. But he always has a combo that he's trying to do. And he showed me some combos I've never seen before, which I think is really cool. And that, people that have that type of mindset and, really study the cards, and that's cool. But it wasn't anything that, like, completely, like, wiped the deck or anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was like, wow, I didn't see that coming, and he won the soul, and he really hurt me. But I'm still in the game. I feel like if somebody takes out every defensive card in my deck, at that point I'm just kind of like, why should I finish this? I know you're going to come in and rescue a soul on your turn. You've already got your second Son of God and second coming because you drew your whole deck. So there's 3 on the first turn, and I have nothing to stop you.
Unless you play an entire Philistine deck from reserve, which can be done.
How do you get it though?
Well, you would have to have some reserve access.
Yeah,
left, but
that's what I'm saying. If
you could use Concealed Riches and they can't hit that, so then you could swap cards in your hand with your defense in your reserve.
But that goes to the point again. You have to be playing against a combo.
Well, Concealed Riches is a good card either way. So
it is a good card, but I haven't seen it in a single deck yet.
Well, okay, that's fair.
I agree, it's a good card.
I think also, like you mentioned it earlier too, John, people are going to have to get used to the second coming not being a soul-winning dom anymore.
Yeah, and I think adding Crowd's Choice, now it's a very costly thing to go second coming to Crowd's Choice to go to your Shipwreck or to go to your Christian Martyr. But, at a certain point,
if it saves your defense.
Right. And this is what I'm gathering, and I don't want to cut anyone down. And again, my opinion is an opinion. That's why I bring people on every week. They've got different opinions. So this is just me talking. But spitballing, if you will. That's how we say it down here in the South. I'm spitballing. But at a certain point, if you play a competitive game, back to the football analogy, if they're blitzing you every play and your pass protection cannot hold up, at a certain point you're throwing screens on the outside, bubble screens to get the ball out quick, or you're running, trying to punish them for being over-aggressive, having, a cutback, run, things of that nature. Like, what they do dictates what you do, and that's the truth in every competitive sport, every competitive thing. Why should our game be any different if we're being competitive? Why should a player playing a certain thing in the field not dictate what I do? And I think every year you can look back at nationals, and the person that had the best meta call as far as a tech in their deck or had the most answers to different things in the field in their deck is the one that more often than not wins the game, wins the whole thing. And so why is it not okay for, you're losing some creativity, but if you want to be creative, at a certain point you have a space to do that with your play group in the local tournaments, district. When you get up to where you're playing the top of the top players in the game, if you're not letting them dictate what you play, you're not coming to win. And I 100% believe that in my heart. After going to my first nationals last year, if you are not playing something in your deck that's an answer to what someone else, if you're not trying to answer the question that every other deck is posing to you, then you're not coming to win. You're coming to have fun and play. And you can do that however you want to, but if you want to come and win, I think absolutely the field and other players dictate what you play.
So since we're talking football analogies, I think about it like this, though. I can come up with trick plays that are – because when you watch a football game, all they're doing is running this kind of this – everybody's got the same offense, essentially. All right.
No.
Roughly.
No.
Yeah, okay. But
I'm going to let you run because, again, opinions, but I wholeheartedly disagree with everything you said there and probably are about to say.
No, you didn't let me finish.
Unless you're Lamar Jackson.
You didn't let me finish. Okay. So if you know anything about offense, John, okay, they're going to run a sweep or they're going to run this or that. They're going to do all these motions. They're going to pass. But, okay, receivers are running slants. They're running goes. They're running curls. They're running, like, everybody's got the same analogy. They may call it something a little different. They're going to run a Z route. They're going to run this. Everything's got a name, right? Like, every route has a name. Every position has a name, and people know it, okay? Formations have names, and you can call it out. The announcer's saying, oh, they're in this formation. Oh, they did this. Everybody knows, okay? And people run different styles of offense. That's fine, but they're called something. But then you see something like a real trick play, like, oh, I haven't seen that before, or I wasn't expecting that, like the Philly special from the Super Bowl a while back. That was an incredible play. Now, was the defense ready for it? No. Would the offense catch them completely off guard? Yes. But in the end, yes, they won the game, but it still counts for one touchdown, okay? My thinking is, though, like with some stuff, when it comes to, like, redemption, is there's those plays that people come up with, and it's really cool, and it's like, man, wow, that was cool. And then there's, like, the back-breaking, oh, by the way, this touchdown's worth 3 scores instead of 1. And then it's like, okay, doesn't seem as fair.
That's because they played their goalpost on Golgotha. They put their goalpost artifact in play. The cross.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but
it fell flat. It was a poor attempt at a joke.
So
not everyone's successful all the time.
Do you still disagree with what I was saying?
Yes, because not all offenses are the same.
I wasn't. You didn't let me finish.
I get what you're saying, but I think there's so much diversity within that.
I mean, if you're Tennessee, you're running with Derrick Henry, okay, and you must stop that. Okay, if you're Patrick Mahomes, okay, you're just a really good player and stuff like that. If you're Lamar Jackson, you got a running quarterback, which is harder to stop and all that.
You've got a running back playing quarterback, yes.
Yeah,
he's not. Come on, don't do the man like that. He's a quarterback.
I don't know, when he can throw to somebody besides the tight end, I'll believe it.
Here in Baltimore, there's all those shirts saying "not just another running back."
Yeah, I'm not digging on him at all. I'm just
that was a dig.
Let me see. Jimmy Garoppolo's dig against him is he can't throw outside to the receivers. He can't throw down the field and outside to the receivers. Lamar Jackson's got the same issues. I mean, honestly, he throws downfield to his tight end. He doesn't throw downfield to his receivers and exploit anybody's cornerbacks.
Yep.
So when he starts to do that, I'll tell you that he's a top-level quarterback. He's a good quarterback, and honestly, I'd probably rather have him overall than somebody like Jimmy Garoppolo. But at a certain point, I'm not crowning that man the next greatest thing, and he is not Michael Vick. He is not anybody. He is trying to be Lamar Jackson. I'm not one of those that says, oh, well, he's just trying to emulate somebody else. He's trying to do his own thing, and he's not a running back. That's a joke, right, obviously. But at a certain point, if you're going to tell me that he's a top-level quarterback like a lot of people do, you're going to have to show me on game footage where he's gotten better since he took over as a starter.
But I would say with him, though, specifically, he doesn't have to be the downfield Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, or whatever quarterback, because his run game opens up the shorter passes, the medium passes, and the different routes that other quarterbacks don't have those open.
So you're saying that he is a combo player that makes you play the game differently all the way through the entire game, not just for one score?
No, because...
So John and Brad, actually, like, talking into that, I didn't mean to cut you guys off, but, like, from what, sitting here in Baltimore watching every one of these games, his first year that he was actually playing, and Baltimore was winning every game, like, what was it, like 42-3? It was embarrassing everybody.
Because they didn't have the book on him yet.
Well, look what happened next year. Everybody watched all his films, figured out how the offense ran, and figured out how to contain him. And he hasn't really been doing that good since then. So when you're talking about, like, the decks that we're talking about, it's exactly what Josh did. He looked at love at first sight and was like, okay, I'm going to figure out how this works, how to shut it down. And that might be something that we might be looking at with this new deck. And it's funny because when you said you played John last night, I messaged him and was like, hey, I want to play because it's important to me. And one of the things that I've learned is I've never played John early yet, and I'm pretty sure he would beat me pretty bad, but I'm still going to go after him and try and play him because I'm going to learn from that loss and learn and see what that looks like.
Absolutely.
To be able to make me a better player. I mean, I'm going to go after the big dogs and say, hey, let's sit down, let's play, let's see what it's like. I mean, I was totally expecting to get on last night and be destroyed, and I didn't have a minute of that, so I probably would have been last night. But
yeah,
that's something I think a lot of these players need to realize is, even though these combo decks are out there, play these people. I can lose 5-1 at Jaden, but I learned something, and learn how I can change my deck to stop this from being as brutal next time.
Yeah. So to pull it back a little bit and get away from the sports talk so much, but it's a good comparison. That, like, in competitive, you have to be aware of what your opponent's trying to do, and you can't necessarily just go out there. It's not running routes against air. It's running them against the other team's cornerbacks. Your running back going against their defense. Your quarterback throwing into their secondary. Like, there's a balance, and you have to balance out what your deck can do and is capable of doing versus what an opponent will bring to the table. And I don't see any problem with an opponent dictating what I play to a certain degree. Now, if it's one where, like, they're guaranteed, if this was something that I thought 90% it goes off first turn, they win the game, like somehow the cross goes off first turn, they deck both of us out, they mill me down, and they deck out somehow. I don't know that that's even an option, but if you found a way to make that happen, then obviously that's too strong. I never got to play the game. All right, let's do something about that. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't do something about that. It would be very easy to put Ephesian Widow limit once per turn if you put an Ephesus hero down, and that would completely shut down both the draw off of Life in the Sun and then the Apollos creating the tokens if you were limited to once per turn. And that's honestly the cleanest way to probably do it, is a rat of one card. You're not banning anything. Boom, knocks that out. But then you also have to look at the first combo that we started this episode talking about, because you have to have another way to work that. And maybe Brad's suggestion of changing it from if put in play to if drawn. And maybe you do those two changes and then you just nerf them both a little bit. And you have a more healthy field. Now, I will admit that a field is healthier without these in them overall. But I also think allowing top-level competitors to go to the drawing board and be like, all right, this is what they're going to do. Either I'm going to perfect the combo and run the best version of it, or I'm going to come up with the counter deck that's going to win more times than not versus this. And I think you push competitive players to, go to that quote unquote get in the lab and kind of figure out the answer to the question that this combo deck is posing. And I think if you just squash everything as soon as it comes out that's really strong like this, then you don't have that area for players to go into the card, database and put together a counter deck that, wins more times than not against this combo. We saw it last year, and not every combo deck needs to be compared to Love at First Sight. Unfortunately, I think that's out the window, and from now on, everyone's going to, this is worse than Love at First Sight. This is as bad. This is more devastating. It's always going to be a comparison thing. But I just feel I played against it with a deck that was not built to counter it per se. I knew it was coming, and I made sure that I had enough things in there to where I could give it a little resistance, and I stopped the combo from happening until the very end where he was able to fish for his second coming. If I had built a straight-up counter deck and I was running at 50 cards instead of 57 to increase my odds of getting the cards that I needed to be the answer to the question, I just don't know where that line is. How much – I definitely think we have to see it out into competitive tournament season to where, oh, well, it's won a couple of districts. Oh, it just won a state, and people are reporting negative play experience or whatnot. Because I think you have to balance it with what the community feels like. I think by the time it got to nationals last year, everyone in the community just wanted Love at First Sight to be kind of done with. And maybe that's what happened. This runs its course, and then on the backside, people are just, all right, I'm done with it. We had fun with it. Go ahead and take care of it. But doing it so quickly and pushing away those players that want to have the challenge of maybe coming up with a counter deck because they think they're, that type of player and deck builder. And what Josh did last year, that I think really makes his win that much more valuable to him as a player, because he went in and he didn't get to play what he wanted to. He played what the meta dictated him to play, and he was able to craft a deck that not only when it played the Love at First Sight combo, but it played other counter decks and it played other regular balanced decks. It was able to win in a variety of different ways. And I don't think you have that if they just no telling what Josh would have played last year, or even if he would have played, because he was talking about how he didn't make plans until kind of last minute to come to nationals. And was it the fact that this challenge, posing the question of who's going to stop Love at First Sight? Oh, well, I can build a deck to take care of that. Maybe that makes a player, engage them a little bit to where they want to go and show that they can stop it. Definitely a balance that has to be worked. And, I mean, that's really all we can say is that leadership does not have an easy job of identifying where that line is and when it crosses over. But I think I don't think if tomorrow by the time you're reading or hearing this episode, Jaden's video came out yesterday, Monday. I don't think leadership should take that, run with it, and within the next 2 weeks, we should immediately have an errata or a rule change, something to stop the combo. I think at a certain point, you at least give it its due to run into competitive tournaments and then see how it works. Is that fair to you guys? Are you on board with that line of thinking?
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, you definitely want to, like I said, one of my earlier comments, we don't know the percentage of this thing, how efficient it really is. So just from what we've seen, it looks like it has the potential to be very efficient in pulling it off and, taking away your opponent's defense and just kind of going in there for free souls. But I could see and understand just letting it play out a little bit, seeing if we can come up with some things to try and stop it, which are probably going to be mostly lost souls or dominance, because with the new reserve role access, it's not like you can use any of the play this character, with the star cards to get something from reserve, like whether it's all the curses to negate neutral cards or whatever it is. But
yeah, that is a fair point when you talk about counters that I honestly had just kind of skimmed over. is the fact that some of those are limited versus what was there last year because of the reserve rule.
Yeah, it's going to be different than Love at First Sight. So you're pretty much going to be relying on Dominance and Souls and just those kind of packages. It's not going to be as much resources, and if it proves to start dominating, I mean, I know there's some states and districts coming up, and if it starts getting that way, then yeah. And I kind of agree with the erratas that you and Brad came up with. The kind of fixes where you're not banning nothing, you're not really taking anything away, you're just kind of slowing it down a little bit.
Yeah, I think that I like how long it took to errata like Endless Treasures, for instance. You know, that was such a powerful card to be able to go in and get throw down a golden calf and draw 2, and then of course with delivered and all that stuff, get 2 accesses. So I mean that was a good change. I think that, like, for instance, Throne, I'll bring that back up. The especially the year it won first, second, third, it became like either you're playing Throne or you're not winning. Is essentially what it was. But rotation helped take care of that because you got rid of Ishmael and Abigail and a few of the other ones that were key to that. But essentially, it was a race to go first, to get back when the rules were get enough souls out and all that stuff. Get your remnant, get your exiles, get this, get that. Boom, it goes off. No restricted reserve access. All that stuff has helped. So I think over time, leadership always fixes what needs to be fixed. And it's never been a rush. I don't remember anything being rushed except for maybe Morning Weep. I think that got errated like right away almost. I don't even, like, when we got into the game, it was already errated.
Yeah, that is fair though, but that one kind of completely warped an entire category. Like if you were playing multiplayer and you pulled that off to where every other player skips their next battle phase.
Yeah, that's type 2. I think they said was.
Yeah, type 2 as well, but definitely in like multiplayer. I think type 2 multi is like where they were talking about it as far as type 2, but multiplayer just being warped by that one card. I think they had to do something about it, and it was also seeing play in regular games, so that one probably called for a quick response.
So I mean, like you posed the question, yeah. I mean, honestly, I would love to play a couple games against both of these still. Like I would like to play a couple more against the first, a couple more against Life in the Sun, which you're saying about names, maybe Sowing in the Sun or something. I was trying to think of the combo there.
I really need to add a wah 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 sound.
My dad.
I've got a sound pad here, guys. Let's see what sounds we have. Maybe we can come up with one. Okay, that's that. That sucks. There's birds. Your joke got bird chirping. Michael Myers.
There it is.
There you go. All right, say your joke again from the top. Let's hear it.
Sowing in the Sun. What do you think? Hey, they like it.
We're getting fancy over here, guys. Oh, there it is. There it is. All right, guys. We're gonna back it up 3 minutes, and we're going to take it from the top. Brad, talking about names.
So I got this great idea for the combo. I'm thinking Sowing in the Sun.
Wait, wrong.
Can't even get the wah wah wah.
There we go. All right, and then the other two are obviously you guys know these. I'll just go through the whole pad with you. We're not ending the episode just yet, but we got that one, and then
in the beginning there was.
Oh,
remember when I did the Angel Wars episode? I've still got the sound on my sound pad.
The first of the Maker King's creation.
All right. Sorry, I hijacked your point. Go ahead, carry on. I'm done.
I don't remember what the point was.
It was that you come up with bad deck names.
Yeah, that's it.
So okay. So definitely there's the gist of this entire episode is that there's 2 combos out, and I think the most devastating part about them is that they can all be put together in the same deck. You can put the first combo in with the Widow combo, the Ephesian Widow combo. And it's also, like I told you guys when I was setting it up and showing you how it works, is you don't have to have all the pieces to pull off the Sowing Bountifully. You can actually just focus on getting Ephesian Widow, a Meek Clay card, and then Life in the Sun. And those lead you to deck out. And once you deck out, at that point, then you have everything to pull off the Apollos bouncing cycle over and over to create up to 100 tokens, however many tokens you want to. Just go crazy with it. Play all the tokens. But then you put that down. Oh, also in Jay's game, I forgot to tell you guys, again, using the deck that Jaden built to play Matt last week. The Afflicted was in the deck, so every time they put a hero, they have to discard a card from hand, so he had to play around that. He ended up having to use Authority of Christ, choose the blocker with Simon the Disciple, and then play Authority of Christ just to get rid of my one evil character. But anyway, so you can put these combos all together, and the only thing you really need to do to get off the one is to get Ephesian Widow, a Meek Clay card, and Life in the Sun, and then you create your cycle, and you end up with everything you need to pull off the bigger combo of getting rid of all their evil cards. So it is. I don't want anyone to walk away from this thinking, oh, well, John played against it, and he thinks that nothing needs to be done about it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I really respect and I appreciate that leadership has decided that they're going to let combos exist within reason until they get to a point to where they show that they are extremely unhealthy for the game, and then something needs to be done. I think asking people to go back to the drawing board and find a way to counter a combo for a couple of months is healthy because it makes the players that are having to counter the combo. Boom. Last year, Love at First Sight. We had to figure out a bunch of counters. A lot of those counters could apply to stopping this deck. Similarly. So you have things that you learn. You're constantly getting better as a player. And I don't think asking players to play outside of their comfort zone is a bad thing. Now, if this is allowed to exist infinitely, to where it's always an option, somebody could just be playing this, 10 years from now, that's a problem, obviously. But to let it run its course and have the space to do that, I really appreciate leadership, because I know there's a lot of people out there that like to do combos and come up with them. To be honest, I'm kind of a combo-ish player. Like when I came up with that Noah deck that abused all kinds of things, there was a bunch of combo pieces to set that up, I thought. Like it had a combo type feel to it, but could also play as a normal deck because of how strong Noah's ability is on its own. And you have just the whole consistency package of Genesis, which is, out of this world. So I'll say it again for the last time. We're not judging. The combo has come to light. Now everyone has an idea of it, or you should if you have not watched Jaden's video. Rob, quit slacking. You've got to have your Thursday time slot, 2 to 3. Make sure you get on the video conference and watch Jaden's video.
I gotta watch the last one and this one.
Yeah, but honestly, watch the video, and yes, it's a devastating combo, but the score of 5-4 in multiple games against it means that it's at a certain point. There was some interaction there, and easily, I thought mine and Jay's game could have gone differently. So there's that. And then I guess I'll go ahead, since I've got both of you guys on, and the Lackey Grand Prix is kind of the first time that we're getting to play with GOC cards. What do you guys think about, not to continue the conversation, infinitely here, just a quick question. What do you guys think about GOC now that you've gotten to play with some of the cards? And I guess we'll start with you, Brad.
Honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around a lot of it. I keep thinking I'm gonna have time to really sit down with it, but I've enjoyed it so far. I got to play Rob, so that was fun, and he was playing more of the disciples, and I was playing more of the gold. I think, is that right? You were
Yeah, I was playing the disciples.
Okay, so that was kind of cool. Just see that matchup, and man, he hit me with I'll let you spoil what you hit me with.
You can do it, Brad.
Okay. So he came in with Simon, I think is what it was. Or no, he falling away my Moses, which I had Moses, the Cloud of Witness, I believe. So I think I had the old one. I think I had just the yellow one. He falling away him, came in with Simon, converted him to Meek to choose the blocker, which is a combo has been around for a while, but he brought him in, and then he played Authority of Christ and wiped out my old board. I was like, wow. But that's a great combo, you know?
I think you had all your Egyptians out, too. It was like...
Yeah. I think you probably hit like 5 characters all at once. And he won the soul. Nothing I could do about it. But that's just the nature of Authority of Christ. And I think that that's still fine. Because I still had evil characters. I still was able to defend myself next turn, you know, and things like that. And, of course, there's all kind of cards that can toss, cannot be negated and all that stuff. But anyways, you asked me about GOC. We're not talking about combos anymore. I like it so far. I'll be interested to see whenever Phase 2 comes out. I don't think that Phase 1 is overly powerful in and of itself outside of these couple of combos. I was talking to you, John, the other day. I said, you know, in a normal matchup, I wouldn't feel too bad playing all the Old Testament cards, or mostly, and then throwing in a few of the New Testament GOC cards. But, you know, even playing with what we played against last Grand Prix, you know, some of those decks I think could fare pretty well against GOC, which I think is healthy. But they're pretty fun so far. A little bit different strategy, a lot of reserve and things like that to get used to. So,
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is just learning what the cards do. I mean, we have them all, and we have them, like, you know, we've looked at them. You can see them on Lackey. You're building them, but there's even moments where, like, as I'm playing, like, okay, and I got to remember exactly what this card does. I have an idea, but I might not remember each and every ability on the card. But it's definitely been a blast using them. As Brad mentioned, I've kind of grown partial to the Disciples. Matthew has just got an amazing ability. And so with my round 1 in the Lackey Grand Prix, I ended up probably decking out turn 4. I'm not as good as Jaden, so it took me 3 turns later. But maybe that's just like, you know, wine just takes a little bit more time to get better. But basically, I'm enjoying it, and it's, you know, when we were spoiling them, you're like, yeah, I can't wait to play the card, can't wait to play that card. But there was even some cards that, like I said, I couldn't wait to play, and I'm like, I'll kind of put that a little aside. And there's cards that I didn't really like that I've actually incorporated, and it's just been a blast. And Brad mentioned it too, the change that you see just from the first Grand Prix to this one. It was, I feel the first one was, I could sit down and just play anybody and not even know what they're playing, just like Brad said, until a card was dropped. I'm kind of getting a little bit understanding what they're playing going on to this, the second side of it, but I think that a lot of people are going to be testing out some stuff. You know, we do have Nats this year, and I think these Grand Prix are good opportunities for people to test out the Gospel of Christ cards, see what works, what doesn't, what might look good on paper might not actually work, you know, once you put it to the test. And that's kind of how I'm looking at it, what I'm doing. I'm testing out a bunch of different things just to see what it looks like, and kind of also test the field and the meta, what everybody else is using, to gauge what I'm going to incorporate in my deck.
Yeah. Brad told me to do this while you were running there, but I didn't want to interrupt you, so I gotta hit you with it, man. You made the bad joke about wine.
You could have done it while I was talking. It's all right.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt the flow there. So I guess we're gonna have fun now that I know where that is on the sound pad. People aren't gonna want to come on the podcast anymore because their bad jokes are gonna be called out. So I will tell you, my thought about GOC is almost, it's going to sound counter to the whole conversation we had for the first hour, 10 minutes of this, talking about the combos and how fast people are decking out. I don't think GOC is as fast and reckless as I initially thought it was going to be. Like when I looked at the gold, New Testament gold cards, the Samaritans and whatnot, I was like, this seems kind of busted the way they're sending everything to your reserve and manipulating your resources. And then you talk about Matthew having that draw, Thomas the Twin getting to the dominance. I don't think it's as reckless as I thought it was going to be. And it's weird because we have two combos that can be played together or whatnot that allow you to deck out turn one. But those notwithstanding, get those out of your mind. Just playing straight GOC and not, running a combo to force a deck out turn one. I really do think that they did a good job of having really strong abilities to where you want to play these cards and test them out, but they're not so overpowered that you feel like if you don't play these cards, you're at a disadvantage. Like I think once it's hard to say with LOC when it came out because you still had the Throne active, Throne of David, the original one from Rock of Ages. You still had that kind of warping things so that you could build a deck and not have to worry about the meek stuff. But if you were playing a deck outside of that and you weren't utilizing some of the meek stuff and you played somebody that was, it almost felt like they had, a bit of an upper hand on you. And so you almost felt like you needed to play some of that or play into it a little bit. And I don't think GOC is so much that. Obviously, there are some good cards that you want to play and splash in a variety of decks. Some cards maybe you want to play in every deck. Some people are going to love or hate Crowd's Choice. But Crowd's Choice as another way to get to a card that you desperately need as an answer to something or to set something up that you're trying to do is a good card. So some people might, even though I don't personally think it goes in every deck, some people might, create a crutch of that card and you might see it, kind of become a staple for certain players. But just stuff like that, I don't think you're at an extreme disadvantage when you play against somebody playing primarily GOC cards and you're playing primarily, like Brad mentioned, Old Testament stuff from previous sets. I think they did a really good job of balancing it out, and I didn't necessarily think that was going to be the case when I first looked at the cards. I was a little worried about the Disciples just running away with it, but then I played Disciples, and you have to choose this ability or this one. They don't really band all together. Now, you can manipulate and band them all together. Obviously, there's ways to do it with enhancements. I think one of the enhancements that you could use, just not thinking about it too hard, is use one of the Disciples to convert so that they're clay, and you could use like Faith of Samuel to band in and something like that. But they don't necessarily.
Nations.
Yeah, they honestly don't even work all that well when you get them all into battle. Like they have specific, like you want Simon to come in and choose the blocker and have an answer for that one blocker. You want now obviously you could then pair in, obviously Matthew could come in and draw. You could do that, but it's not as overpowered as I thought it was going to be. So I think actually without letting the current state of combo within the game kind of skew the fact that, some things slip through testing. That's always going to be the case when you have people that are, not full-time employees dedicated to doing this. So obviously we grant some grace with that as players. We have to, because it's just impossible to expect them to catch everything. I think overall they did a really good job balancing the set, and I'm actually enjoying playing it. And after the combo, maybe at the, if it goes through the course of the season, who knows? But it'll be interesting to see how Phase 2, when it comes out, if it's kind of balanced the same way, or if I know that we assumed this, demons are pretty strong, Herods are pretty strong, thieves. So there's a lot of things to look forward to, but I assume it's going to have the same kind of balance that Phase 1 has. So overall, I think the set's going to, in retrospect, once we have all the cards in hand, we're going to appreciate all the work that came into putting them together. And I think overall it's going to be a fun meta once both phases are released and we're past at whatever rate. Either, people find an answer to it and it just works itself out, or they make an errata change. We're past the combo portion of this. I think it's going to be a really good set, kind of how Lineage of Christ, when it first came out, it was just Throne, but then once Throne kind of won that Nationals the year that it was moved because of COVID, it seemed like people started, digging into the set and realized, oh, this is a really good set. And there's different things that you can do and whatnot. And I think I'm looking forward to that with Phase 2. Not to ramble too much. So, do either of you gentlemen have anything you would like to add before we end?
I don't have anything really over here. Just I basically just to follow up and agreeing with you that I don't. My initial thought was that same with you that the New Testament gold was just I was like, how is this not going to reserve half of somebody's deck? But then I actually built it and started playing. I was like, this is not as powerful as I first looked at it. I mean, it's good, but it's not like
it's just not. It's not. It doesn't make you feel like, oh Lord, if they put down one Samaritan, I'm in trouble because I know what's coming.
Yeah, it wasn't that strong. And the same with the disciples. I think there's I've talked to a couple other people and working with what I've been building, but I think there's primarily just like 4 disciples that I even use, really. I know there's like 9 in the set, but there's really, Matthew and Simon being them, and I think it's Thomas and Philip, the main 4. But I'm assuming that the Peter and the Andrew and all that are coming out in GOC Phase 2 will probably pump them up a little more, but what we got right now, it's not, and it's cool to see that, so that it's like somebody could still play an Exodus deck with the new plays and still kind of match up with some of the New Testament themes, and it's not like we're going to be. The initial thought was, everything in Old Testament's going to be bad. Everybody's playing. You have to play New Testament now because GOC is going to make you do that. So, it's kind of good to see that, and that you can still do both.
I think a lot of it was a lot of people felt like they were going to be forced to play New Testament souls as well. And that also hasn't been the case. So I think, again, it's hard to say that on the heels of a conversation talking about combos that are warping the meta or have the potential to warp the meta a little bit. But I really do think overall they did a good job balancing the set, because that initial thought was like, oh boy, this looks bonkers. So Brad, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I'll just add that I agree with you guys.
No. There we go.
I knew it was coming.
So I'll quit having fun with the soundboard here. Thank you guys for joining, Brad, Rob. I guess I'll get to editing this. So again, if you've listened to this podcast and you have not watched Jaden's video showing the combo deck that he came up with, and then you haven't seen the one 2 weeks ago, he's got a video on both of the combos. Make sure you go and watch those. Give Jaden his props for I give Jaden his props for coming up with the combo decks. Because even if you don't like that they're out there, trust me, you want them to be out there so that they can get handled. So we'll just kind of leave it at that.
Yes, I'll add to that. Thank you very much for showing us some of these things instead of just keeping them to yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Jaden.
All right. Peace. All right. Thanks for listening. Milestone episode number 20 is now in the books. Want to thank again Rob and Brad for coming on and discussing the state of combos within the game. And definitely want to thank Jaden for bringing these to light and sharing them with the community so that everyone knows that they're out there and knows that they exist. Also, we do not envy the position that leadership is in. So all of the elders that will have to make that decision of when to step in or how far to let this run before they do something about it, definitely don't envy being in that position. And we definitely will obviously roll with whatever decision that they make and trust that they're going to make the right decision for the health of the game. So definitely value those guys. I would encourage you, if you are signed up for the Lackey Grand Prix, make sure you get your games in for round 2. That should be up now as far as the pairings go. And otherwise, we'll look forward to seeing you next week, where we will welcome back Chris Fashman to the podcast to continue a discussion that we started a few weeks back about playgroup building, and we'll kind of talk about that next step and how to further build that playgroup, build the collection of cards for those players and whatnot. So look forward to that for next week, and we'll be seeing you then. Peace.